Hey everyone, I am so happy to be here with Rachel Jewell, who I just adore and who I admire so much. We've hung out over many years, and Rachel's just like the person to go to if you want to really like look at what is going on with life. She's a trauma-informed specialist who looks at the mind and chronic illness and without any bypass, without any, rubbish spiritual stuff that denies someone's experience. She like is rock solid guide to take the mind back through to what's true and then see what happens along the way. So I'm so
Yeah.
happy, lovely, so happy that you're doing this with me and thank you. So I'll hand you the space now to say anything more about your work or
Yeah.
anything you'd like to say before we start.
Thank you, Claire. Thanks so much for the invite. And an identity update. It's Rachel Davis these days.
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
New identity, which is ironic for the conversation that we're having today. Yeah. So yes, we'll start with a disclaimer because I am not medically trained, and for all illnesses, please seek medical help from your doctor. Um, what I am and where I'm speaking from today is I am a trauma-informed specialist practitioner in the area of chronic illness, fibromyalgia, ME, long COVID, as well as having sort of 30 plus years of counselling and coaching and groups and all that sort of experience behind me. But most importantly, where I'm speaking from today is my lived experience of both chronic and acute illness, what's felt like on a loop of sort of re traumatization cycles, really. So, I'm going to talk about three things around chronic illness today. And these diagnoses are really on the rise. Probably everybody knows somebody that's perhaps been diagnosed with chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia. And unfortunately, the medical model is ill-informed still, ill-equipped to respond effectively towards recovery. So I'm going to do two misunderstandings and a simple truth for the three things today. And the first misunderstanding is our symptoms. So we have a symptom, and that might be when I'm talking, I'm referring to both emotional and physical pain. So one body mind. So when we have a symptom, it can cause fear, panic, anxiety, and generally seen as a bad thing that's happening. And what I wanted to say today was symptoms are good.
How great is that to hear? Yeah, love that, Rach. Yeah.
Symptoms are good for us,
Mm.
and symptoms are happening for us, not against us, because it's the body's communication sort of saying, hello, hello, look over here. This is something, to look at here and inquire about. And it's those symptoms are working for our good, not our, not against us. Um, and particularly with chronic illness, it starts with stress and burnout. Those symptoms are ignored. So, no, I'll get to that later. No, that's not happening. I'm not looking at that. So, the body is waving at you saying hello. And when you're not listening because you're busy, you've got to go to work, you've got to look after the children. I'm not listening to that. It will eventually scream at you. So, it will only get worse. And just the same as your car engine light, if you continue to drive around, one day car's not going to start, or you're going to be on the dual carriageway and it's just going to stop.
Mm.
Stop. So that's the first misunderstanding. And then the second one, which has been huge for me, in my journey is identity. So, as I mentioned, many repeats of illnesses and chronic fatigue diagnosis. And that was me, I believed. So when I was born, there was quite a serious issue, and as a baby, I had my first surgery. So through our conditioning, through social and environmental, and if you're aware of family systems, my role became the sick one. That was the role I played in the family. What's wrong with her now? There's always something wrong with her. And that conditioning was going in, obviously, unbeknown to me. And when I started to see through our work together that that wasn't who I was, and it wasn't a me that was continually causing, because a big part of this is like shame and blame.
Yeah.
Why can't I get better? What's wrong with me? I can't stop getting ill. I'm doing this, I did that, I did the other. This shouldn't be happening. It's all my fault. So you're piling sort of more identity on top of identity. And seeing through that and discovering the separate self and how the subconscious has accumulated that conditioning and lived it out and recreated it has been absolutely life-changing for
Mm.
me. So that's really the second misunderstanding. We are not our illness, and neither is it about blame,
Mm.
blame and shame, really.
So brilliant.
And there's so many clients and people that it feels natural to blame yourself
Mm.
if you can't get better.
Mm.
Or like me, if I kept getting ill, it was a constant message of, I keep getting it wrong.
Mm. Mm.
I must just be wrong.
Yeah.
But of course, there was no Rachel I in there who could get it right or wrong.
Yeah.
And that brings me beautifully on to the third point, which is a simple truth, really,
Yeah.
which is the intelligence of all things, the intelligence of all things. So if we think about the body mind in the form, there is a nervous system. There are organs, blood flowing, cells, skin, all this stuff happening with no doer. It's all going on
Yeah.
without a Rachel. Um, and perhaps an example of this is when we eat, uh, we don't have to get in there and separate that food into proteins, fats, carbohydrates. We can't get in there and make sure all the right nutrients go to all the right cells and the right organs. Who's doing that?
Mm.
Who's doing that? We don't have that separate self-controller.
Mm.
And another key example for a lot of people is sleep. We cannot control our sleep.
Mm.
We can't clock it in, 8 hours tonight, please, or I'll just do 6 tonight. We can't, you can't program it in. We're not in control of our sleep. And that begins to point to the intelligence of all things. And once you get into studying the body and the sort of physiological functions, I just got more and more amazed at everything that's happening without
Yeah.
me,
Yeah. Yeah.
without me really. Yeah, so that's a sort of short synopsis of two misunderstandings and a simple truth around chronic illness. And from my own sort of lived experience, there's a way through, and it is a spiritual healing, but it isn't sitting on top of a mountain praying. But there's not a transcendence of chronic illness or, you
Mm,
know, when I say spiritual healing, I don't mean a sort of transcendence or knockdown or bypass, as we call it. Um, what I mean by that is beginning to inquire about how it works.
yeah.
Start looking into the experience of our experience. How and, how is that happening?
Mm,
And for our emotions and as much as our physical pain, um, and I guess if I had to sum it up in in short, using as few words as possible, my experience, a lot of people I've spoken to, I would say that chronic illness comes from a suppression of expression. So certainly for me, had to keep things very suppressed,
mm,
not be fully engaged, not be listening to wants, not be being expressing, um, and that pushing down and suppression of whatever I was feeling or thinking or disallowing what I really wanted and not really acknowledging that. Yeah, so it's a huge area, both chronic fatigue illnesses and spirituality and pathways through. Um, and it's it's a roller coaster, but there is there is a way through, and there is recovery. So yeah, I think that's sort of the headlines, I guess, of.
oh, so great, Rachel. So I love how clear you make it and how safe you are. You just hold this whole entire area so strongly for us. So thank you, my darling, so much. And so if sure, can we put your contact details on the podcast if someone wants to get in?
Oh yes, that'd be lovely. So inspiredbyrachel.com,
Okay,
and that's actually an irony. It's like inspired by Rachel, who's not a separate self, so I quite like that. Inspiredbyrachel.com. You can find me in the real, Facebook group on Facebook, or you can find me on LinkedIn, really. Yeah.
brilliant.
Always happy to hear people's experiences and always learning and growing in different people's experiences and things. So yeah, yeah, reach out. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, darling. Thank you.
Thank you.
See
Lots
you
of
soon.
love.
Bye.